May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC, Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, doing our bit to help preserve the legacy of Shunryu Suzuki and those whose paths cross his, and anything else that comes to mind. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So today I am going to talk about beginner's mind and the extent of the influence and reach of the concept, the method, the practice of beginner's mind. Now, why I am doing this is because I have been looking into that, I have a reason. I'm putting together a little proposal for something or information to back up a proposal. And, so I got into that. So, first I was looking at the reach of Shunryu Suzuki, Suzuki Roshi, and he's become rather well known in some circles, of course, in Zen circles, in Buddhist circles, in philosophy, psychology, and in business, in the IT world, and depending on, what those people were into. But what I found was far greater than the extent of his name, which the publishing of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind brought his name and his teaching to many, many, many people. And, if you read the afterward I wrote for the 50th anniversary issue of Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. It's on Cuke.com. That goes through, talking about, how extensive how far that book reached, and I've gotten hold of Janine Lantine recently, who did that wonderful, I'm not sure what year, or maybe the 50th anniversary of the publishing of it or something. And she did a show at Page Street at the San Francisco Zen Center, actually next door, at the building next door, which has offices. And there's a nice big room, which was good for a gallery. And she created a show with every page of Beginner's Mind represented by somebody's book. Maybe a photocopy of whether they'd written a note in it or whatever. And it was so great. And some of them were in other languages. And that really was impressive. I wanted to scan it and put it on Cuke.com, but we'll have to wait till it's available. I think it's at Bancroft Library. Bancroft, archives now. So might have to wait 5 years. Or, I don't know, I've been thinking about, hiring people to go find it there and sneak it out. But anyway, all right. One thing I did with beginner's mind was look into, there are places on the internet, there are apps that will look at word frequency, frequency of use. But before I get into that, let's go to the Shunryu Suzuki's use of beginner's mind. So I'm on ShunyuSuzuki.com now, and I searched for beginner's mind with an apostrophe and without nothing came up. So it's spelled right every time. And I find the first instance of use of it is in 1965, October 16th. It says B. That means it's during a session because he'd give more than one talk in a day during session. This October session, I think this is at, this is just at Page Street. Pardon me. It's Okoji on Bush Street. It doesn't say where it was, but it's in my beginner's mind talks. It tended to be at, not tended to be, they were all at Los Altos. But I think this one probably would have been at Sokoji. So, searching for beginner's mind, we see. He says, so Dogen Zenji always emphasized beginner's mind. We should always remain in beginner's mind. It means our experience should always be refreshed and renewed. It means always have the joy of discovering something, the same joy as children discovering something new. This kind of experience is not possible to attain just by training through which you expect some result. So in the lectures that we have, of course, many, many lectures that he gave that weren't recorded or the recordings were lost. So that's the first one. Now the next one, and I'm looking only at verbatim. The next one is the beginner's mind lecture. And of course, in the verbatim, you don't have the famous quote. you have what this famous quote was made from. Now, that entire lecture is about beginner's mind, and it's not very long. But I think I'll just read the parts where he says beginner's mind, because you can go there. Look, it's 11:11. Hey, if you're into 11:11, that was 11:11. Thursday, November 11th, 1965. I have a friend who read 2 books on 11:11. That's usually thought of as 11 minutes after 11 o'clock. My. This is his most famous lecture. So right here at the end of the first paragraph, he says, we say Shoshin. Shoshin means beginner's mind. If we can keep beginner's mind always, that is the goal of our practice. Then he talks about if you chant a sutra once, you're fresh. But if you keep chanting it over and over, you might lose the freshness. So he says, for a while you keep your beginner's mind. And if we continue to practice 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, our beginner's mind will have some pattern, and we will lose the limitless meaning of original mind. I'd like to point out something here. Both those sentences I read you the first one had 6 seconds interference in audio, and the second one had 10 seconds interference in audio. So that part of the beginner's mind lecture is probably lost forever, unless some sort of advanced AI can get it. But let's keep in mind just enough survives. We've got all we need. And in the next paragraph, of course, he didn't speak in paragraphs, but this is in paragraphs. The next one is, in beginner's mind, we have many possibilities, but in expert mind, there is not much possibilities. Recognize that? That's the one that Trudy Dixon made into, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are few. Something like that, right? So, as Suzuki actually said it, in beginner's mind, we have many possibilities, but in expert mind, there is not much possibilities. A little grammatically off there, Suzuki, but we understand the gist. So he says, so in our practice, the important thing is to resume to our original mind or our inmost mind, which we do ourselves, even we ourselves do not know what it is. This is the most important thing for us. The founder of our school emphasized this point. We have to remain always beginner's mind, and this is the secret of Zen and secret of various practice of flower arrangement, practice of Japanese singing, and various art. Now, I want to point out something here. You're going to notice that he doesn't use beginner's mind many times in these lectures. I think I count 27 times. That's including, maybe it's 26, 27. That's including 17 times in this lecture. So in the lectures we have, and we have a few hundred, that he only mentions beginner's mind 9 other times. Why? Because everything else is a synonym for it. Not everything, but even in this right here, he says, so in our practice, the important thing is to resume to our original mind. What's original mind? Beginner's mind. Or our inmost mind. What's inmost mind? Beginner's mind. And, all right, so here we have, if we keep our beginner's mind, we keep our precepts. When we lose our beginner's mind, we will lose all the precepts. And for Zen students, the most important thing is not to be dualistic. We should not lose our self-satisfied state of mind. Now, what's the self-satisfied state of mind? Isn't that beginner's mind? What does that mean, self-satisfied? So that sounds sort of smug, huh? No, that's not what it is. It means you're fine as you are, So then down here to the next paragraph, we see, so the most difficult thing is to keep our beginner's mind in our practice. So if you can keep your beginner's mind forever, you are Buddha. In this point, our practice should be concentrated. We should practice our way with beginner's mind always. There is no need to have deep understanding of Zen. Even though you read Zen literature, you have to keep this beginner's mind, and you have to read it with fresh mind. We shouldn't say, I know what Zen is. I've attained enlightenment. We should be always beginner. This is a very important point and difficult. We should be very, very careful about this point. So then at the very end of this talk, and they're very short talks he gave in Los Altos, and it says, all right, I'll just read the whole paragraph. In Japanese art, when the master some art, I'm reading it verbatim, right? When you master some art, when you become a successor of your master, you will receive some paper on which something is written. Laughs. No one knows what laughs. It is. Laughter, laughs. Laughter means everybody else is laughing. It is very difficult to figure out what it is and to explain what it is. Laughs. But if you have a beginner's mind, it's all right. Thank you very much. If you can say thank you very much, laughs from the bottom of your heart, that's all right. If you say what it is, laughter, you have no secret. Now listen, when he says what it is, he means what is it? The Japanese, they put the verb at the end, and so that was always a problem for him. When you say what it is, you have no secret, laughs. Just you can say, thank you very much. That's enough. But this is a very difficult laughs. So by your practice, we must make our beginner's mind more and more. We should appreciate beginner's mind. This is the secret of practice, Zen practice. So that's the abbreviated version of the beginner's mind talk. Now, I want to make one comment on this thing. In the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, and in the expert's mind, there are few. Beginner's mind is not a negation of expertise. It is not a negation of the expert's mind. And of course, there will be a tendency for us to think that way and go, he's an expert. What does he know? There was a book that came out, God, I don't know, but 20 years ago on experts. And these two guys did a lot of research, and they found out no matter what topic they looked into, the experts were always wrong. And, well, that's true because things are always changing. Knowledge is changing. It's evolving. And so there's those who know the most now are others climb on their shoulders, to use a Zen term, and supersede it. But anyway, I remember that. The expertise shouldn't be mindlessly accepted or followed, especially if it's your own. But neither should it be negated. The two go together. It's like knowledge. It's like beginner's mind, or emptiness is the mother of knowledge. That not knowing things comes out of not knowing things. And isn't beginner's mind related to, don't you see it, not knowing? Not knowing is closest, or not knowing is most intimate. Cleary translated it, not knowing is nearest. I liked closest. That was the first one I read. I don't know where I read it. And it's more spatial, and intimate is more emotional. And but anyway, either one. Look at Meister Eckhart's key to understanding: know nothing, want nothing, have nothing. What's know nothing? That is beginner's mind. This is not something that was unique to Suzuki. Of course, he credited to Dogen. But actually, if you go back and look at how Dogen used it, and I have done that, he didn't use it like Suzuki did. He used it like in a more, like someone, don't forget your beginner's mind. Don't forget how you felt when you first came to the temple. Don't forget that. I mean, Suzuki really developed, Dogen hardly ever said Shoshin. And so when Suzuki said it was very important to Dogen, important teaching and all that, there's so many like Hoshin, I forget what that means, bringing up, I forget. In many, many ways, of course, Dogen emphasized beginner's mind, but he didn't use the phrase Shoshin much. And you won't find it, you'll find it going back in Buddhism, even to India and into Pali and all that. but it has a more, it doesn't have the same emphasis that Suzuki gave it. Suzuki gave it an emphasis that it's not just like your bodhicitta, your desire for enlightenment, what gets you going. It's like the expression of your most evolved and mature practice. It's always there, or it can't be there if it's not there. But anyway, that's for each of us to figure out. All right, so that's 11:11. Now I'm going to find, here's the next lecture, which was March 26th, 1966. This is session 2 because it's C, and this is Sokoji. And it is 4 times in this lecture. And here he says, how to achieve or how to acquire this kind of calmness. Calmness of the mind is to have right way-seeking mind, which is beyond gaining idea. So when you have right way-seeking mind, you have right practice and right way-seeking mind, and there you have nirvana. If I speak too much about it, it sounds more and more something unusual and difficult to attain, but it is not so. If you always retain the beginner's mind, that is way-seeking mind. And then later he says, so for your teacher, there's not much things to tell you, actually, as a mother tiger doesn't have so many things to teach for her children. To live with their children is how to teach. There's not much thing to tell you. So with beginner's mind, if you walk, he laughs, like your teacher walks, that is the way how to study Buddhism. So beginner's mind is very important. Just to practice Zazen as your teacher is the only way. If you have some doubt on this point, you should read the Shobo Genzo, 95 volumes of Shobo Genzo, over and over again, he laughs. Then you will find out how important the beginner's mind is. So that's very interesting. You'll find out how important the beginner's mind is by reading the Shobo Genzo over and over, which rarely mentions beginner's mind. So it's infused in the teaching, and it's way. See, he's so impressed with Americans, and he was impressed with his English teacher, Nona Ransom, and saw, my God, people that don't know anything about Buddhism, they don't have all these set ideas, they can have like a fresh understanding, you know, and that's why beginner's mind was a big deal to him, I think, is because he was experiencing it in a way where we were beginners in a way that people where he came from in Japan couldn't be because they grew up with Buddhism. So he saw it was possible, and this is something he learned from his Ransom. He saw it was possible for people to understand Buddhism who had no background in it. However, you know, because he'd say things like that, then we would become arrogant and think we have beginner's mind. This is true. And they don't. And, you know, Suzuki said, you know, in Japan, moss is grown on the branches of Buddhism and this and stuff like that. And then we would think, yeah, we've got the true way and they've lost it. And that is not what he meant. He thought we had a great deal to learn from them. We had shortcomings and weaknesses in our practice that were monumental, that we could learn from those who had grown up. That we could learn things from those who had grown up in a Buddhist culture, and who were involved with a much older Buddhist institution. And, of course, institutions become calcified and they've got all sorts of problems. But there's a great deal to learn from them. And we can learn from each other. And that was one thing he thought, learning from each other, helping each other. And it seemed like the most ambitious idea, but like foolishly ambitious. Like he's sending people back over there to help set up things so we can have exchange. He was doing it at a time when it would be like sending scouts into, like if you're having a war, sending scouts over there to sort of feel things out. Every one of them's going to get killed. But eventually, you can make inroads, except maybe war is not the best analogy. But the exchange going on between Japan and America, between Buddhism in the East and Buddhism in the West, is much more mature now. And Suzuki is somebody who saw it coming, believed in it, and wanted to do everything he could to help make it happen. And, he was ahead of his time that way. He brought beginner's mind to us. It was not something he made up. It was not an original idea, but what he did with it was creative. All right. So let's go to the next example. The next example is 1967, April 2nd. And this is so Koji. And this comes from Tony Artino's notes. Thank you, Tony. This is when he's talking about when he said, when we were little boys, we were all Buddhists. Even when we were 16 or 17 years old, we were still innocent Buddhists. But Zen can be dangerous to innocent minds. They easily tend to view Zen as something good or special by which they can gain. Such an attitude is misleading and can lead to trouble. I'm going to skip some now and go to, we all have lost our Buddha nature because we were so careless about it. This is the human predicament, existing during Buddha's time and existing now. When we now practice, it should be with a beginner's real innocence, devoid of ideas of good or bad or gain or loss. As long as we have beginner's mind, we have Buddhism, our original nature being unchanged. We should believe in our innocent mind. At the same time, we should beware of slipping into hell through attachment to this idea. All right. And then toward the end of this lecture, these are really good notes by Tony. He's talking about Dogen, and he says, Dogen said, try to cut off the function of the small mind. If you do this, you will surely see the way. Dogen is very clear here. There is no reason for us not to follow his directions, but we should not practice with the idea of gaining something good. In this world, there is nothing which is just good. When we have good, bad is already there. We should just keep a beginner's mind, and we should avoid being greedy and feeling that what we have is not enough. We should practice and live with patience. In this way, we can control our lives, but control does not mean to gain or achieve something. It means to appreciate and constantly enjoy our life as it is. So this is from 1968, 12/29. So he's talking about how he was at Sojiji Monastery practicing as a monk, and he loved it, and he told his master, I want to stay here longer and keep practicing. And then Gyokjun Son, his master, who'd also made him leave Eiheiji after only a year and a half when he wanted to stay. Someone said, maybe it's time for you to leave Sojiji. And he said, he also said, Suzuki doesn't say that this time, but another time. I don't want you to become a stinky Sojiji monk. Or maybe that was a stinky Eiheiji monk. But anyway, and so what does Suzuki have to say? And he always put emphasis on Dogen Zenji's beginner's mind. You should be always beginner, whose life you should begin. Whoop, whoop. Anyway, you understand, but this is how he said it. You should be always beginner, whole life you should begin. It means you should not stick to old type of practice or any kind of practice, and you should be always a new student. When you go to Rinzai Temple, you should be a Rinzai student. You go to Japan, from America, you should forget all about what you've studied in America, etc., etc. So that's his only comment about beginner's mind in that lecture. And this is from 1969, 10:30, October 30th, at Tassajara. He says, the word intoku ichijo, ichijo. In Chinese, 8 characters, which to think he attained that which he really didn't, to think he is enlightened when he's not really, didn't know. That's one point. And so that's why we remember this. They think they've attained something they haven't. It's from a story I was telling you before. This is very important warning to Zen students. So that is why we remember these words, is they're the opposite statement will be beginner's mind. Have beginner's mind always. This is very important, especially for Zen students. And lastly, August 4th, 1970, when we practice Zazen, we say beginner's mind is everything. When you arise Bodhisattva mind, there is already Buddha mind. There is everything. So I don't know which is the more appropriate word, Bodhisattva way or Buddha way. I don't know. Maybe, better to call it Bodhisattva way rather than Buddha way. Buddha way is something like dead way. He laughs. Not active, not alive. It looks very like we're not Buddha. When we say Buddha, we are sentient being. So there's a big gap between Buddha and sentient being. So, again, from that paragraph earlier. So when we practice Zazen, we say beginner's mind is everything. So that is what Shunryu Suzuki had to say about beginner's mind. All right, so 1970, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind comes out. And so that was initially titled Beginner's Mind, but Meredith Weatherby, who published it, told Richard Baker, who went to him and arranged it in Japan, in Tokyo, stayed at Weatherby's home. Weatherby said, you got to have Zen in the title. So Richard put in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and that has worked very well. And that book was immediately started selling well. It was very successful. And that same year, Ed Brown's Tassajara Bread book came out, and that book sold very well. That was Shambhala. It was one of Shambhala's first books. That really helped them. And the Tassajara Bread book helped, also told people about Tassajara and Suzuki. I don't know if Beginner's Mind is in it, but as we've seen, so many teachings, so many things he said, they said Beginner's Mind can be like a synonym for them. So, and then in 1971, Be Here Now came out. And Be Here Now had a section on Tassajara, and people came to Zen Center because of these 3 books. And they also came to Zen Center because of Kapleau's book, Three Pillars of Zen, although, he had a totally different type of practice in New York, but they'd hear about Zen and they go, oh, there's a Zen place near here. But Three Pillars of Zen was published earlier. But so the knowledge that there was somebody named Suzuki Roshi was frequently called Suzuki Roshi, and sometimes Shunryu Suzuki. If you were talking about it in terms of being your teacher or going to study with him, people would usually say Suzuki Roshi. And if it was a more, talking about Zen mind, beginner's mind or something, they'd tend to say Shunryu Suzuki. I stick with Shunryu Suzuki, unless I'm talking to, some Zen student who wants to hear Suzuki Roshi. I try to stay away from using Roshi because they've all become Roshis now, and it's rude not to use the same honorific for, if you use one person, then anybody at that level, you got to use it. Well, we've got a zillion people that are studying Zen their entire adult life. I don't know what their understanding is. They're just all Roshis to me. Anyway, so we have the spread here of the knowledge of Suzuki, and people go else. People come to Zen Center. They go elsewhere. The books are going out. In 1972, Steve Jobs goes to Reed College. He only was in college a semester, but then he'd audit classes and lived nearby. And his friend, Daniel Kotke, I have an interview with Daniel Kotke. I ought to get hold of him and ask him if I could, but it was a pretty long one, if I could put that on a podcast. Anyway, Daniel Kotke says Jobs' favorite books were Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and Be Here Now. And they were like really, really into Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And, there had already been sitting going on at Reed. But in terms of spiritual practice, they went to India after a while, right, to look for a guru, and to seek enlightenment, and came back, and Jobs was disillusioned, but he went back home, right? He lived was Jobs' home in Los Altos, or where it was very close to the Haiku Zendo. Yeah, Steve Jobs from Los Altos. So he'd been in India looking for religion, and he came back to Los Altos, and he started sitting, 75 or something. So he started sitting at the Haiku Zendo, Marion Derby's whole garage. And Marion had moved on, and Les Kay was living there, and Kobuchino was the priest, and Jobs became very close with Kobuchino and was for years. But what most people don't realize, and if you get Les Kay's new book, I don't know what it's called now. It's coming out right about now or in a couple of months. Les Kay talks about it. Les Kay and he got to know each other, right? Now, Les Kay and Steve Jobs had a more practical type of relationship. And Steve Jobs would come to him with questions about practice, and they would talk about it. And Les Kay had great respect for him. He was really, sincerely, he had deep questions. And especially, Les published that book, Zen at Work. Steve Jobs was asking him questions about that. And I can read you, maybe I'll do it at another time, what Les had to say. But it's coming out in his new book. So maybe I'll do a thing on that. Yeah, Les Kay said that Apple was his main client, after getting started there with Jobs. So he had that meditation group and some of those things going that were informal. But he actually had a business relationship with Apple, teaching, mindfulness and beginner's mind and all that, apply it in business. Les came from IBM. He was a lifelong IBM employee. Now I did a search, and I've got a chart on the instances in which beginner's mind is found in publications. And in the it's down there at a reasonable, decent level because of the book and this and that. But in the 90s, it starts climbing. Then in the late 90s, he was invited by a group of Apple employees to lead a weekly meditation and discussion group on campus. The group was informally called Z Attitude, a playful term blending Zen and Apple culture. It was not a formal Apple program, but rather an employee-organized offering open to anyone interested in Zen practice and mindfulness. Regular meetings, Dharma talks, and discussions led by Les. Les started a program there, and, he would have lunch with Jobs. Meditation at Work program at Apple. He started in 1998. I did a books Google search for beginner's mind, and it's a graph, and so it rises. In the 90s, it starts rising more, and then in 2000, it just takes off. It's practically vertical. The extent of the reach of the concept of beginner's mind really increased. It says it's about a 75 degree angle then. Yeah. So sort of between 45 and 90. And so I searched some other places like Google Scholastic search, something like that. It came up with almost 5,000 mentions of beginner's mind in scholarly articles and different journals and things like that, One thing I searched, JSTOR or something like that, it found 339 peer-reviewed articles. So anyway, the point here is that pretty clearly because of Jobs and the beginner's mind really, the concept started, really took off. Jobs specifically credited beginner's mind with helping him return to Apple in 98, I think, when he had Les start doing those classes. And he said the lightness of being a beginner again. He said a number of things about it, but being able to approach it with beginner's mind gave him a lightness. So, one thing that was interesting was in some of these searches I did was beginner's mind, the recognition level of it was so high. It was much higher than the recognition level of Shunryu Suzuki. So it's pretty clear that that many people have heard of beginner's mind in some sort of training program or study or something, where there's no mention not only of Suzuki but of Buddhism. It's linked to mindfulness, but it doesn't have a recognition level like mindfulness. That's extremely high. So, I figured out that beginner's mind is mentioned in published books once every 1.2 million words. Well, maybe not said that. 1 out of every 1.2 million entries was beginner's mind. Of course, you get some article on Beginner's Mind and it'll mention it over and over. But that's extremely high. I was really shocked. All right, here's some examples of how beginner's mind has been used. Mark Benioff, Benioff, the CEO of Salesforce, who bought Time magazine. He says he lives with the beginner's mind. He gives talks on beginners. He cited Suzuki in New York Times in the beginner's mind. There are many possibilities in the expert's minds. There are a few. Phil Jackson, NBA coach, frequently, repeatedly refers to Suzuki's teaching in Sacred Hoops. Linda Berry, oh yeah, the cartoonist, she was into it. Oh, that's right. That is in my afterward. Is in my beginner's mind. That film director Sam Peckinpah kept the book by his bed, and the book's been translated into over 30 languages, and it's still selling well. So here I'm just going to read you some things that I found. Here's 5 ways to cultivate a beginner's mind. Major corporate coaching platform article. Offers BetterUp coaching specifically to get help to cultivate a beginner's mind. Targets business professionals. Formerly the lead researcher at the Deloitte Center for the Edge. Used in Fortune 500 leadership development. Beginner's mind as core leadership practice for explorer craft. A lot of people, I'm looking through different things here, use it in design. I saw one, there was one where a team trying to design a better shopping cart was applying beginner's mind to their to the process of their mind storming, how to do that. Anyway, there's just this endless list. Oh, here's an interesting thing. The Agile programming movement, promiscuous pairing and beginner's mind. That concept of promiscuous pairing sounded interesting. Here's programming best practices. Swap out the senior member of the pair every 90 minutes. Health care. The beginner's mind is formal medical education approach. Physicians must be willing to adopt the beginner's mind. Oh, here we are. Shopping cart redesign project using beginner's mind. There's one on teaching Chinese cooks using beginner's mind. Educational theory development, business strategy and management. These are lists of things. Anyway, I'm going to quit now. It's it's really long. So I guess I've made my point that the concept, the method, the practice of beginner's mind has spread very far. And, one conclusion I read was it was the most successful example of cross-cultural concept transfer in modern times. It's like from one country to another, from one culture to another. And, what's interesting is how little Suzuki did to make this happen. He just mentioned it in one lecture a bunch of times and mentioned a few other times. And the book was named then and it came out. And, that just came out of that little garage. Marion's, and he gave it while it was still, it was in her living room then in '65. The Zendo being built in her garage happened in the summer of '66. So that, and just cause and effect. Is Steve Jobs is an essential element in it. That in making it spread further. So that's very interesting. And so what I'm putting this together for is a pitch on why there's a guy who wants to make a movie out of Crooked Cucumber. So he already wants to. He doesn't need to be encouraged. But I'm talking to somebody. I've been talking to some people in film distribution, and this one person wanted to know how many people would know who Suzuki is. So, and I started looking into that, and thinking about it and talking with ChatGPT and Claude AI. Both of them are very helpful. Looking for instances of the names and trying to estimate the number of people they represent. It's really staggeringly high. I can't believe it. So I hesitate to repeat some of those numbers. The thing is that if I think if Crooked Cucumber, the book, The Life and Zen Teaching of Shunryu Suzuki, were a movie, I would do it different from the book because you want it to appeal to people who've been affected by his teaching. I would now call it, if it's got Crooked Cucumber as a title, I'd have the hook in the title, the subtitle or the hook for the movie be the man who brought us beginner's mind, or the quiet priest, the quiet Japanese priest who are humble is a little too, it's a little too much. Something like the humble Japanese priest who brought us beginner's mind, but I wouldn't use humble. The soft-spoken Japanese priest who brought us beginner's mind. But his story, there's only so much you can do with beginner's mind. His story is just so interesting, and there's so many highlights. There's so many great moments. So we'll see what comes of that. And I appreciate your sticking with me. I just wanted to go over the research I did, and sort of. I was not aware of how extensive the concept of beginner's mind had spread. I mean, it didn't take me long doing research to realize that's what people know. That's what a vast number of people know. Not as many as know mindfulness, and not near as many. That mindfulness has, but. Okay, so that's it. This has been a Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from sleepy Sanur with Dog and Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.